What's your first move if you see $1 billion in your bank account? Everyone is your friend when you've got that much money. I remember a neighbor of mine won the lottery about 15 years ago. Won around 10 million. He was a single older hippie dude who more or less kept to himself. It was pretty interesting how he suddenly had all of these friends that wanted to spend time with him and try to convince him to buy a bunch of shit. I remember having a couple of beers with him and his brother, and he was bitching about how most of the people in his life just became fake friends and leeches. I felt bad for him. Step 1 is definitely keep your mouth shut if you can. I read this tip. When you win a lottery, usually there will be a bunch of lawyers and investment managers and bankers there. In some cases, the payout is not all in one. You have to choose between getting a large sum right now or getting like a monthly portion for the next 40 years. And then there's also all the advisors who want you to invest all that cash pretty directly. So here's what you do. You listen to nobody there because these people, while technically financial advisors, work for the lottery company and the attached banks. They're not fiduciaries. Financial advisor is not a protected term. Anyone can call themselves that. A fiduciary is a person you hire who has to legally make decisions in your best interest. So when you hear you have won the lottery, you hire a fiduciary right away and you show up with them in tow. And you take as much money as you can get in one go. Because nobody guarantees that that lottery company is going to be around for 40 years, or that you will live that long. Plus, when they agree to pay you, say, $6,000 per month for the next decades, that math usually excludes interest and inflation, which technically lessens the amount they pay you. So always go for the biggest sum you can get right away, because if you've got that much money and invest wisely, it will start working for you right away. Assuming it's not an error. I'd get a really good lawyer, get the money out of a checking account, FDIC, don't insure 1 billion, and into mutual funds. I get a phone number that I only give to my lawyer and have the lawyer do all my bidding for me. Things like go in and quit my job for me. Travel around the world to scout out good places, to buy vacation homes. I'd set up a few endowments for organizations that actually do good work. Have a year of nothing but vacation and parties, then I'd spend the rest of my fortune trying to end climate change and save us from ourselves. The correct answer is whatever you want to do. $1 billion is enough to give everybody you ever have liked $1 million and still have over $900 million. Then buy whatever house you want, whatever plane you want, car, boat, etc. And still have $800 million. Buy several business that make you enough to live comfortably off of while doing nothing and still have $600 million. Invest an insane amount in whatever low-risk stuff you want and still have $400 million. Then realize you have a cheat code for life and continue doing whatever for the rest of your life and then have a kid, and they can also do whatever they want for their entire life. People don't realize how much $1 billion is. Then you consider that a couple people have over $50 billion and do nothing for anybody else and keep their workers in shit conditions for absolutely no reason just so they can race to have more money than the other rich guys at the table. Assuming it's a magic billion where it's all fine with the bank in terms of taxes and all that. First thing I would do is start small in terms of fixing things. I would give money directly to the homeless and tell them to do whatever with it. I would give money to help rebuild their homes that have fallen into disrepair. Give money to the addicts to go to therapy. I'd pay off the student loans of people on my neighborhood. I'd have the streets repaved and cleaned up. I'd erect rent-controlled apartment buildings. I'd create my own little neighborhood state within my city and evolve it into a city-state. That's what I always imagined someone like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett would do when they said they were giving away all of their money and devoting all of their energy towards philanthropy and making the world a better place. Like you have unlimited money. Pick a city and solve homelessness. I would do everything I could to make sure the money actually belonged to me legitimately and wasn't the result of some computer error or attempted money laundering of some kind. If the money turned out to be mine, I would pay off debts, purchase a home I plan to live in for a minimum of 20 years, invest in a handful of growing markets, and then put the remaining savings in bonds after setting up a trust and consulting financial advisors. I would continue to work because it would keep my mind active, and if I'm working, then I'm not wasting money. The first day would be calling my dad to ask what to do, then call the bank, Navy, taxes, anyone who could know. Normally takes a few days before the sender comes up even for the bank, so for those days I would do nothing. If it is a mistake, I need to leave it untouched as they would come after me for using it. So for a week, I would be excited, but not get my hopes up. After that though, if legit, I would probably spend around $5,000 on myself for clothes and stuff right at the bat, and put away for $10,000 a year for that sort of thing. Put a few million in stocks, look for a dream house, spend $5 million to pay the neighborhood's entire home mortgage, a $10,000 for my husband's car loan, and $200,000 for the rest of our mortgage. Throw some money at people I care about. Take my husband on a long vacation. Start an animal rescue abroad where needed, and leave the rest in my account wondering what to do next. First thing would probably replace my computer. First big thing would be to get my mom a new house. I'd be one of those frugal billionaires, not like completely miserly and penny pinching, but I don't really have a bunch of over-the-top wants like a mansion or private jet. I don't care for designer clothes, and I'm perfectly okay with eating normal people food. I like to try to give back a lot, too. I'm pretty outspoken on how much I think billionaires are inherently bad people because they hoard wealth that could be used to help a lot of people, so I don't want to be hypocritical. Well, I'm in Sweden, so that would be a lot of money here. Transfer most of it to another account, and then buy a ticket to the US and a ticket to the UK. People to meet. Connections to make. Give a fair share to some charities I like. Buy a whole new wardrobe. Getting rid of everything I own in terms of clothes and shoes unless they had a special memory attached to them. And I would probably buy an apartment. And rent a storage unit so I could finally go get all my shit from my exes, our old apartment. I would also pay my ex back for everything they had to pay for the last 4 years or so. I've had a rough life. I would also go get my cat too, since I'd probably be able to have her on my own then. Right now, I have no space and no money for it. Would give a chunk of money to my mom so she could travel a little and hopefully retire. I would also get a lot of electronics, especially stuff to help me with day-to-day life. I have issues with most routines. I'd probably get an Alexa or something. And I'd get a dog so I could finally have a routine of going outside and being healthy every day. Finally being happy. Money wouldn't make me happy. But what money could do for me would make my life so much richer, no pun intended. Move a 100 million or so into some mutual funds and start shopping for real estate. The mutual funds would give me about a 5 million to 10 million a year income that I could use to cover my day-to-day expenses. Real estate because it's a solid long-term hold under any circumstances. Probably build a big fancy compound to live on with friends and family. And have a network of safe houses in major cities so I have an established place to crash whenever I travel. Longer term, I'd probably spend most of my time dropping angel investments onto small companies doing weird and cool shit. Step 1. Purchase land, a lot of it. Step 2. Sustainable farms that require low amounts of cost and resources, time, and maintenance knowledge. Step 3. Sustainable infinite water source, a hydroelectric dam generator that purifies water and traps silt for use in the above farms. Step 4. Build massive community-level shelters. Step 5. Find the most infinite demands and make the deals where families that live in my communities must give 40 hours a week per family to helping provide and supply those demands. Step 6. Build social, physical, and political infrastructure for the community with a system of inverse democracy. Leaders are whoever can get power, but the people can and will vote to remove them from power at will. As part of this infrastructure, build a news distribution company. As part of this, build up a mercenary militia that is capable of deployment in any country. Step 7. Build this setup of a community in every country that allows it across the world. Step 8. Slowly spread new colonies of communities in every country, as their production caters to demand and they have plenty of free time to satisfy their life's meaning. Their survival will spread. Eventually, there will be more of us in each country than others. Step 9. When we are the majority, overthrow each government of each country by voting them out or becoming a democracy, then having everyone vote for a shared unified state, a hegemony. We will have hedges, our own currency, and the world will be forced to unite behind our tyranny of providing food, shelter, and water for all who need it. Let the people decide what to do with their wants as everything they need us provided. Use the tyranny of the hegemony to force the rest of the world as we outnumber them. Markets for once, no one suffers for need. That is $1 billion well spent. Open up as many other accounts as possible in one day and transfer as much as possible into each account and withdrawing as much as possible from each account. Get the best lawyer and accountant I can paid in full from my account to see how I can keep all the money. Set up dummy corporations to launder the money and make it so the flow of money isn't as easily traceable to me or will take time to pin on me. Start leaving cash everywhere for friends or family. Book the soonest flight tickets in cash to a country where I could be safe from extradition or otherwise put my money in a place untouchable by the U.S. Set up honeypots and fake addresses under my name to see who goes after me. Get plastic surgery done. See about getting a new identity. Lose all contact with anyone I used to know. I'm assuming the money isn't mine, and someone is going to want it back soon. Assuming the money is legit, I'd be able to drop around a $250,000 to a $500,000 on a house in my area, which, in USD, for most people would likely be somewhere between $150,000 to $400,000 max. Maybe more if the house is right. Then I'd drop the $200,000 plus dollars, again, some $100,000 for the USD, to start up my own cafe, all the equipment, renovations, property lot, and several months pay for employees. If the style I really want, all the preparation needed for it, no stress. So that would be about $700,000 into my $1 billion. I'd be able to give my sister $500,000 for a house. She's been saving for years. Since she was at least 20, she's nearly 30 now. I'd give her that money in a heartbeat so she could get her dream home in the country without needing to worry about price. I'd then drop the same amount of money on my brother. A 3 or 4 bedroom house would suit him, I think. He's got a baby, named after my father, and they're likely to grow. I'd probably give him a $500,000 for a house, then an extra $20,000 pocket money, anything they want or need to not stress so much about money. I know they've struggled a lot with finances. I want to see them not need to worry about earning enough for rent or anything. I'd probably also go and spend $200,000 on a house for my mother, and similarly on a place to buy for my partner's dad. That'll total to some odd $1.6 million, plus the more than likely $500,000 for my cafe and my own home. I doubt I'd spent $500,000 on a house. That's a lot. $2.1 million, still plenty to go. I guess I'm buying my friend a house too. They've struggled with poverty enough. $2.6 million. I'd have enough to buy my American friend plane tickets and their own home in Melbourne. They wouldn't need to worry about spending years saving or struggling to get on their feet, and I'd be able to give them some extra money so they could have a cleaner and not need to stress about her hip or her health. $3.6 million so far, with another say, $2 million. At most, I'd probably buy a couple of investment properties and keep an extra $1 million in my bank account before going to an accountant for the rest of the $994,000 million. Maybe I'd donate it. I don't know. With $1 billion, you could afford to pay 14 million people $30 per hour full-time for 5 years. So my plan would be to start a nonprofit whose sole purpose was to hire 14 million random people across America at $30 per hour, and their only job would be to do random acts of kindness throughout the day in their neighborhood. Imagine the impact that could have. 14 million people who would be doing nothing but good in their communities for 40 hours a week. I bet it would have enough positive effect that it could attract enough donations within those first 5 years to become self-sustainable. The most appropriate thing to do would be make sure it's not a mistake. But I'd see what the FDIC limit is for funds and spread the money across several accounts. Then I'd invest in indexed mutual funds and exchange trade funds. I'd max out my Roth IRA and whatever tax advantages investment accounts I had. Invest in whole life insurance and a deferred investment account. I'd pay off all my immediate family's mortgages, buy them new cars, buy the home and car I want and a couple of investment properties, secure a management company for said properties. Buy my BF a car and different house if he wants. Then I'd do all the things I would do if I never had to work again. Something like this actually happened, I think in Australia, but I can't find a link for it. Basically, someone got $130, not billion or million, just $130,000 paid into their account in error. They immediately made every effort to withdraw, spend, or transfer the amount before the error was realized. They pretty much got away with it too, because the larger part of the $130,000 they gifted to friends and family, and it then creates a legal minefield in retrieving the funds. Those friends and family could argue that they innocently received the money, which they pretty much did, but had since made financial plans around having that money, and should it be retracted, it could leave them in financial difficulty. I'm a former member of staff for a large international bank. I was only a very low-paid employee, no one even close to important, and we were told that if such an error is made by the bank, it is the bank's loss. They can send threatening letters. The first will politely draw attention to the error and request return of the funds. Then 14 days later, the follow-up letter will say something like, "You are currently in possession of monies not intended for you, and you have not complied with our requirement that they are returned. Contact us to arrange a legal settlement or further action will be taken." It was very cleverly worded. Any transaction is a legal settlement, but that's how they threw the word legal into it without crossing a line. And the suggested threat of further action was meaningless. Further action could just be another letter. I know this firsthand because I had to tell customers they had no legal recourse if they accidentally paid them money to the wrong person. All we could do on their behalf was send those letters I mentioned above. I also know this firsthand because when I left that bank they paid me for another month and then tried to claim it back. It was only about $400, but I gave that bank 15 years of my life, and they would reduce my lunch break by 3 minutes if I took a toilet break for 3 minutes, more than my allocated 5-minute toilet break. So I argued and I kept that $400. Stand stunned for a few minutes. I don't think any of us have the comprehension of exactly how much this is. Any one of yous could live on $100K a year enjoying a life of luxury and still only use less than 1% of this. Anyway, after that, sit down and figure out how to best take a chunk out for myself, because I'm plenty selfish, and see how to set up the rest into a managed fund for public good. I could probably set a fund to pay for local college for every high school graduate in my city for a full 3 years, assuming $5,000 per semester, or about $40,000 per student, and it would probably go about 10 years before running out. With good management, there's no reason the fund couldn't last almost indefinitely. Honestly, the first best thing to do is take out how much you should have in there immediately. That way, they can't overdo the correction. If you look at any of your auto withdrawal or auto deposit terms, they are allowed to correct any mistakes by taking out money without permission. That can leave you high and dry because when it comes time to get your money back, there's a manual process. So if you have $500 in there, and suddenly you have $1,500,000, withdraw your $500 and hold it in an account or even in cash. Then tomorrow, when they withdraw the balance to cover their mistake, you still have some money. Okay, after seeing the comments, I'd feel guilty if I didn't call the bank. But if it was something purposely done, like a billionaire randomly transferred $1 billion to a random account, or I won the lottery, I'd straight up buy a house for myself, my mom, my dad, my brother, and then buy my foster mom her dream beachside house. I'd also buy myself a nice car, probably a Tesla so I don't have to drive it all the time. After I do that, I think I'd fulfill my childhood idea of buying a couple of the big houses in my city. It's a colonial city, so we have a bunch of grand old houses that have way too many bedrooms that a lot of people buy to make B&Bs. I will then separate them and make them homeless safety centers, provide the centers with the correct resources, and help for the category that I sort them in: families, addicts, and mental illness. I would then oversee all this, but hire the correct amount of staff to continue this. I would invest a good $50 million to $100 million so the homeless centers would keep running. I would then in my spare time write books, travel the world, post-COVID and post-vaccination, and enjoy life as much as possible. This would be my dream if I had the money. Get as much out as humanly possible. Order flight tickets to 20 different countries and book hotels in those 20 with rental cars booked in the 20. Transfer as much to multiple stockbroker accounts as possible without drawing suspicion. Then transfer cash back to multiple Green Dot and prepay Visa debit cards as possible. Assuming I was able to get at least $250,000, then drive to airport 3 states over and buy ticket to a completely different city with cash. Keep pulling off all cash from cards till emptied. Never be seen again. Buy a large ranch somewhere with lakes, mountains, and wilderness. Build several houses and still have room for more. Each house is secluded from the others. Install electrical and plumbing everywhere. Infrastructure for internet access. Proper roads. Let my mom come live in a house for free. My sister and her husband. And whatever room I have left, offer up to homies. Come live on the compound, grow weed, shoot guns, and never work again. Learn how to invest or find someone who can do it for me and do it right. Never work again. Only do things I'm passionate about. Buy ATV and jet skis. Snowmobile for the winter. Fish several times a week in my stock lake. Hunt. Grow psilocybin mushrooms. Make DMT. Look at space with a huge telescope. Expand involvement in reptile hobby. Learn venomous reptile husbandry. Build airstrip and get pilot's license in a plane. Fly all over the world. I'd put $4 to $5 million into a diversified set of investments to live off of for the rest of my life, but I'd stay at my job for now and keep my living expenses low for the foreseeable future. I'd even keep my cheap tiny house for another couple of years while we carefully design and build our new home, targeting a net cost of about $750,000, a little more than we planned. I'd add a solar roof, geothermal heating, cooling, and higher quality insulation. With $5 million, I'd buy my parents' house for them and set up a retirement fund for them to live off of, vet and hire a set of contractors and services to take care of the house for them, and convince my dad to quit his job and travel like they wanted to. Out of my $4 to $5 million, I'd start planning trips with my family and figure out some way to give my nieces and nephews lots of money for college as starting life plus retirement funds, and I'd teach them all about investing, which I may do anyway when they're older. With the remaining $950 million, I'd set up a fund and start trying to figure out how to help the most people with that money. Maybe look into turning Texas blue at the state and federal level and see if we can't flip the gerrymandering or end it. Since the rest want to keep dark money, in politics I see no reason not to use it to destroy the whole party. If progressives make up the majority in the House and Senate, we can actually pass legislation taking radical action on climate change, which might literally save the world. Especially since U.S. leadership on this issue will force other countries to up their games. I'd spend a bunch of money trying to radically depopulate our prisons, bring that 2.1 million down to closer to $210,000 like it should be. I'd dump money into lawsuits pursuing punitive legal action against companies that have profited from human suffering or environmental damage. I'd fly more people out of Afghanistan. I have about a dozen half-formulated concepts that I could suddenly afford to manifest, like designing prosthetics that exactly mimic muscular and skeletal function, organizing a friendly local pod of dolphins into a paid workforce with interspecies communication being a research priority, crafting a tabletop game and book series my living situation prevents me from working on. Besides that, a whole lot of land and rescue animals, especially the ones that are difficult cases. I would happily pay good money to transport every unadoptable animal in the country to one large mass of land that is built and staffed for the purpose. Once the billion starts running short, I would likely shift into the rescue being run on earned income from my game, with any additional funding going to prop up the research programs between grants. I don't think $1 billion is enough to do everything I need to be satisfied I lived my life to the fullest. Call the bank. If it was legit for whatever reason, I'd first write checks to all my immediate family or friends for $5 million, each to help relieve any financial stress they have. Also, I'd go to my church and make a donation to help them get their new school some funding or help with tuition for lower-income families. I don't have a very big family and only have a few close friends, but shit, even if I did, and it was like 100 people, I'd have $500 million left, and that's still a crazy amount of money. Anyway, then I'd pay off my debts. I'd keep working for a while until it all sinks, and I don't just quit with no kind of direction or plan. I'd buy a reasonable house and vehicle, and after moving all my stuff in would take a vacation and indulge a bit. After coming back, I'd adopt a dog and try to settle myself for a while. I'd focus on creating some kind of financial plan that would continue to generate income during that time. After figuring that out, I would do some research and get in touch with people who know about regenerative agriculture, then buy a big piece of land to build a house and start a homestead type of deal. I think I would be happiest doing that. Other than that, travel a lot. Buy houses or apartments in my favorite places so I can visit and be comfortable with my family. I'd also look into doing regenerative agriculture on a larger scale, and I'd adopt children.